A couple guys were going to throw me in. I had some very expensive cowboy boots on. And I said, no, not till I get done with getting these off. So when they ran to me, I just jumped in. 3.5 feet of water and must have landed on my legs and didn't bend my legs at all. I did have contacts in. I threw my head back. I presume, I don't know. I don't remember any of it. And I drowned. I broke my neck in 4 places and drowned. And I was under about 8 minutes till they actually got to me and got me out. You'll get through it. I've said this to groups of people too. It's like sweat dries, blood clots, and broken bones heal. Suck it up. You got to move ahead. Don't sit there and ponder in it. And then who knows if you'll ever get over it because you didn't have the guts or the grit or the determination or courage to climb out of it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the State of Mind podcast. Tools, stories, and truth on being human. My name is Mike Stroh, and this is a podcast for living with courage, clarity, and compassion. On today's episode, I am speaking with Jay Setchell. Hello, Jay. Thank you so much for joining me and your willingness to share your experience and wisdom with us. Can you start by introducing yourself and telling us how you got to this point in your life and what you're up to today?
Thank you, Mike, for having me. Number one, and that's a good and it's a long question or a long answer to a short question, but to sum it, really is born and raised on a working farm in north central United States, cattle, hogs, all the crops, and so on, which gave me a different perspective on life compared to a lot of people, just for the size of operation we had, what we did. But it gave me a lot of things that formed my life. And from there, went into the Marine Corps, have had multiple death experiences that they got me back from. I've had multiple near-death experiences that I should have not gotten back from, but didn't quite get over that edge. And but I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've started multiple companies. I did work corporately for 10 years for the 5th largest corporation in America at the time. Traveled quite a bit. Was kind of a corporate problem solver, it seemed like, at least what I did. And but they let me go when I was 41 years old, and I'm 76 now because I had so many surgeries. My paralysis was getting worse, and that was a risk factor. So it just led me out. I could have quit then, I guess, but it was, I had other things in my mind. So started multiple other companies and did very, very well. And now I'm retired, but I've been doing some podcasting. I wrote a book. I'm also very involved in a company that we're national, and I'm a partner in the company and a heavy investor. And we just picked up a contract with the UK for their military special forces. And we signed an agreement with Saab, which is leading us into 48 other countries. So it's going to be a very, very high end. And the tough thing on it is that I'm 31 years older than the next youngest guy in the company. So I feel like the old man, which I am. So it's my role tends to be more of a mentorship, advisory, insight. What experiences taught me, showed me, and where can we go? And that's proved good in a lot of cases. So it's really always about helping other people and trying to do your best to make sure that works, because we all have a short time on life or short time on earth, and it's shorter than we realize till we get older. And suddenly then it's, wow. So I guess that's a summation that can take it and run.
All right. Thank you for that. I am slowly coming into relationship with that reality that life does end as I enter my mid-40s.
Mid-40s?
Yeah.
I can't remember that far back.
Yeah, well, man.
Yeah, I know.
So can you, in Canada, it's a little bit different. I think maybe in many places, America does have a very strong military and culture around that. And I think it is generally a wonderful thing. Can you just how did you decide to enter the military, and how did your military experience shape your life at that time and sort of lead into the other things that you started doing?
Mike, first of all, I think part of the reason I went in the Marine Corps is I had a cousin named Bob that was like my hero. He was my older hero and 7 years older than I was. And he was in the Marine Corps from 60 to 64. And he told me explicitly, do not ever go into the Marine Corps. So that's like telling a kid, don't eat the candy.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
okay. So that's the biggest reason why I went in the Marine Corps. But I also had some old comic books that he had that I got from him about Sergeant Rock and how they battled the Japanese and how they did all this on the islands. So, I just knowing what I knew, and I studied World War II quite a bit back. I enjoyed doing that. And, you know, I wanted, I wanted to be in the hardest. I wanted to be in the toughest. I wanted to be in the ones that were in first and out last. And they've got a great reputation, but my time was very short in the Marine Corps. Ultimately, I I mean, I enlisted in late '67. My feet didn't hit the ground till May 31st, 1968, and I was dead November 12th the following year. So I only made it 17 months, 12 days, and some number of hours. And I just visited a gentleman last week that I went to boot camp and ITR with that even was out earlier than I was. He was only in Vietnam 5 days and was on a 5-man fire team patrol and stepped on a mine and lost both his legs. So, time goes fast. Time goes real fast. So I was 19 then, and I spent a whole year in the hospital. And, but it really, the Marine Corps to me just really, I'll use the words pounded into my head, but just solidified because I've got a hard head.
No, sorry,
But
I have to just interrupt you briefly. I don't want to forget. I use that exact same terminology when I talk about my sponsor in AA who pounded things into my head, but it was kind. It was kind and loving and whatever. But sorry to interrupt you there. I just had to. I know that language well.
you were clarifying, but that's okay because that is what it is. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, it's kind and loving. They pounded it into my head.
Yeah.
With a smile. But
Yeah.
they just emphasized what I had been raised with. And that is, if there's a will, there's a way. You can do anything you want or be anything you want if you put your mind to it. Never give up, never quit, push forward. People may expect this and want this, but always deliver more. It's just, and the world is a bigger place than you are. So do for others and that will come back to you. But leadership, understanding about it, I picked up sergeant in 17 months. I was very, very, very fast promotion, but it was because I was doing above and beyond what I was expected to do by far. But it worked out good. So, all for the better.
Okay. So you spent a year in the hospital. Then how long were you in the Marine Corps for?
Well, I was in 17 months, 12 days, and about 20 hours when I died. And when they got me back, then I spent a year in the hospital, got out November 31st of the following year. And through a series of things that we have here in the States, I was put on what they call the TDRL, Temporary Disability Retire List, which you're still active, but you're semi-retired. And then I had to fight the Physical Evaluation Board at Great Lakes Naval Base up by Chicago. And I got my retirement, was effective discharge, honorable discharge with retirement December 1st, 1974. But I didn't get my 100% disability, which I was supposed to have had then. I was supposed to have it before. By then, it was by command, and I still had to fight it for another 17 years till September 1st, 1991.
Wow.
Yeah, I went all that time. No back pay, no interest, no penalties, all that they promise you. And my son, when he got out of the Marine Corps, ran into the same thing after 7 years, getting ready to go to warrant officer school. they put him out at 90 and said, you'll get your 100% when you get there because we don't have your MRIs. And so we had to fight that 2.5 years later, but at least it didn't go 17. That's a long time.
That is a long time. So was that your first life and death? What do they call it?
Experience?
Yeah. Near death experience or death experience. Can you just explain what that was?
Yes, sir. That was my first true one. When I was 17, I was standing on a feeding auger. I had just come down a silo, and my grandfather kicked the auger on and off. I don't know why, but had he let it run, I would have been a real problem. And this was 2 years before I even went in the Marine Corps, or the year before I went in the Marine Corps, sorry. And my foot slipped off the top of the auger. I was just getting ready to launch off into a snowbank in real early January of 67. And it broke my right ankle, sliced my boot open, sliced my leg open. But I was grateful that I was able to get off into the snowbank, even though the pain and the blood were there, because had that auger stayed on, I'd have turned into hamburger within 3 or 4 seconds, just maybe not even that long. So, but the Marine Corps was my first real one. After that, I had another one, September 3rd, 1973. I had a drunk hit me almost head on, and he got killed. He was thrown out of his vehicle and run over by his own pickup truck, no seatbelt. And I did have my seatbelt and rolled multiple times down into a deep ditch. And there was a car, I'd seen it. There was a car behind me, apparently about a half a mile. But we were out in the middle of the cornfields and soybean fields of America. I mean, of the Northern Plains anyhow. And it took them, I remember I bled out. I remember the noise. I remember the grinding. I remember the flipping. I remember the glass in my mouth. I remember that I was impaled because what held my steering column, or my steering column, my windshield column up had gone in and pretty well blown my shoulder out, put the bone out the back of my arm, severed my deltoid muscle, busted ribs again, punctured lungs again, so on and so forth. But I had no way to move, and I was crushed down under the steering wheel badly. But I was out of my body, way up in the air, and I could look down and see them finally arriving and realizing I was either bled out, I'd either recently bled out or was bleeding out. But I was gone. I could hear voices. I don't know what they were. They were welcoming, but they put transfusions into me from a couple guys. Next thing I knew, I had woken up. It was about 4 or 5 days later in the hospital in our hometown. And then moving into a third one, because I know you're going to ask about it, is 8 years later on the 4th of July, 1981. I was 31 and a half years old, and we'd been to a 4th of July parade for the States and played volleyball. And I'm real competitive with volleyball. And late that afternoon, early evening, they said, hey, let's go down to so-and-so's house just on the other side of their lot, but you had to drive around the street to get there. He put a new in-ground swimming pool in. And we were all hot and sweaty and whatnot. We got down there and a couple guys were going to throw me in, and I had some very expensive cowboy boots on and my billfold. And I said, no, not till I get done with getting these off and my billfold out. And so when they ran to me, I just jumped in 3.5 feet of water and must have landed on my legs and didn't bend my legs at all. I did have contacts in. I threw my head back. I presume, I don't know. I don't remember any of it. And I drowned. I broke my neck in 4 places and drowned. And I was under about 8 minutes until they actually got to me and got me out. They didn't go down earlier because they said he's just a crazy old Marine and he's just going to grab a hold of you and he can hold his breath forever and he won't let you go. Well, I wish they would have not said that and they would have tried, because I wouldn't have drowned, maybe, but who knows what else would have happened. So from that really, really changed my whole life in a lot of areas, physical areas, faith areas, insight areas. That accident changed my life more or as much as anything or everything else in my life had done to that time.
Okay. And many people who go through things like this or various forms of this, and maybe it's not a fair judgment totally, but many people, when they're suffering tremendously and having things like this happen to them, can end up cursing the world, right? Why me? How me? Where life's not fair, all those things. And that tends not to be helpful for people. How did you, maybe it came from your upbringing, et cetera. How did you just have the different perspective, and how did that different perspective help you?
First of all, Mike, I never once looked at it like that. I didn't look at it a bad way. I never looked at it a bad way in the Marine Corps or my ankle being broken. And I think a lot of it, if I go back to this, when we talked briefly about, insight that you get into yourself from questions, I think just the fact that I was raised on a farm with great parents, great grandparents, seeing life and death as a commonality. Plus, we raised a lot of cattle. We raised a lot of livestock. And when you raise them, they go to slaughter. That's what you raise them for. Plus, you have some that die. We've had very, very few that would ever die, but you saw death. Or you had a dog, it's your favorite dog, but now he just disappears. Grandma, what happened to the prince? Where did he go? Well, just dogs know when they're going to pass away and they just disappear. That's what happens to farm dogs. I don't know what happens to city dogs. They don't go out and get a taxi ride or call an Uber. Farm dogs just kind of disappear. But I think that just having been through what I'd been through, I knew life was going to be tough no matter what. And I didn't live in the easiest time. I was born in 49. So, we didn't have air conditioning. We didn't have fancy stuff. We had party lines with a ring up, and so you just came to expect and understand that this is life. It's not a big deal. You'll get through it. And there's an old saying, and I'll just say it now. I've said this to groups of people too. It's like sweat dries, blood clots, and broken bones heal. Suck it up. You got to move ahead. Don't sit there and ponder in it. It's just going to make it worse. And then you're going to feel worse. And then who knows if you'll ever get over it because you didn't have the guts or the grit or the determination or courage to climb out of it. That's how I feel about it.
How it is difficult for people to accept that reality a lot of times, especially when they don't have, or they just, nobody's really chooses it, I don't think. But, I talk to many people, you hear many stories of people who really just fight against that reality so much, and it causes them so much suffering. I don't know how it's hard to ask because I don't know if there is an answer. How do people cross that bridge, right? So some people do receive the messaging of, you really just got to fucking suck it up. Like, stop complaining. It's not going to help. You got to move on. But other people really are not open to that. So I'm just kind of curious if you have any insights on how those people may come to see this perspective.
I don't know that I have any specific rules of insight, so to speak, but that's where I believe it's a matter of encouragement, but it takes other people to help other people. And that's the one thing that we don't have as a rule anymore, at least in this country. And I saw it in Canada when I used to go up there, go fishing up in Ontario, the groups of people that we would see. And that's a group of community, a group of people that you could depend on, people that depended on you. And that could be farmers down the road. That can be people living on the lakes up in Canada that got fishing camps. And they always knew that, Ole over there or Bob over here would help you out and work with you. But I think a lot of it too, Mike, is kind of for a lot of people, it's the perception, the ability to talk with someone or to someone. And I think maybe an example is when they used to push me down to physical therapy and occupational therapy when I spent many months in the rehab clinic for my broken neck because I was never supposed to move. and I walked out of there. I didn't walk well, and I walked with a halo cast bolted in my skull, and I walked on crutches, and I used leg braces, but I did it, you know? And what I found was I would have people, when they were pushing me in the wheelchair down to therapy, let's say I go by a room and over here it says Sally Smith, whatever. And I would always ask, oh, who we got in this room or what it is. And oh, she's in there. Maybe a broken neck, maybe a broken back, maybe it's a stroke. Stroke people are harder to deal with because it's a mental thing. It's a brain thing that happened, not from here down, and but if they've got a problem, and I would stop and I would just say hi. I would ask them, a lot of people, I would ask them if I could say a prayer for them. Some people I would get into saying, hi, Sally, you have a halo cast as well, but I see you're already moving your arms. That's phenomenal. I can't even do that. And I'm going to, that's incredible. What else do you have for goals? And ask them, and then help them work with goals. And if you saw them in physical therapy or occupational therapy, reach over and say, Sally, you're killing it. You're doing great.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, you weren't doing that. So I think a lot of it, Mike, is number one, there is no answer because some people don't want help. Period. They won't accept it. They won't acknowledge it. It could be hitting them right in the face with a 2x4. They're not going to take it. Yeah. And that's the fact, but the thing is you got it. So you have to cut that loss. You have to triage it. If you want to use a word from the medical field, triage it and move ahead with what you can and help those that you can. And I think that's the best answer is, do what you can do with who you can help. And those that you can't, I've got somebody within my family that I can't, they're a good person. They're not a bad person, but they just don't seem to get it. And they're moving ahead and they're doing, their own thing. But in the big picture, I know they're going to wish later on in life when they hit 65 or whatever, they're going to say, God, I wish I would have just done a little bit more. And a lot of times, Mike, it doesn't take but just a little bit more. Dream big and act small. Take small steps. But I think that's the answer to your question personally is take small steps with somebody and, encourage them a little bit at a time. But other than that, it's a dilemma.
Yeah. Well, that was a wonderful answer. I want to touch on the community aspect you brought up first is something that is a real kind of hole in our Western, whatever societies, maybe in others as well. Largely, it is argued, brought upon by, I don't know what it is, turning away from religion and et cetera, and those type of practices, which for better or worse, has happened over the last couple hundred years. And it comes up so much in my work with individuals and also in my own experience with addiction recovery. Community was a monumental part of and still is part of my well-being and sanity and quality of life. And I don't know how to, as you said, there aren't really solutions. I just try to remind people over and over of the importance of community, whatever it looks like. And it's nice to hear you bring that up. And then the last part of what you said around small acts of encouragement, sort of one foot in front of the other, was also very lovely to hear. So yeah, thank you for that.
You're welcome. I believe the community aspect, jumping on what you're saying there, it does involve everything. I can only go from where I was raised and what I experienced, but out on the farm, a few miles out of town. But my mom was a teacher when all his kids were back in school. Well, I was the oldest, but when my little brother started school, she went back to teaching, but she taught piano lessons. So she was always involved in the school communities and did with the piano lessons. She helped with others when they did their recitals. She played the organ in the church. She played the piano in the church. She instructed the choir in the church. My dad was quite almost always on the school board or president of the school board. So he was involved and most people, not all, but most people were involved in some way. We did not have much for organized sports, if you will, in a very number one, very small town. We're talking the 50s and the 60s and the early 70s. So at least when I was there, or through the 70s, actually, it just didn't exist, you know. But the high school, that when you had a football game, everybody turned out for it, and everybody everybody. And we didn't have fights between the teams. And we just didn't have that. And I believe that the religion I think must have had 8 or 9 churches in our town, our little town. And, Methodist, Presbyterian, Baptist, Catholic, of course, Methodist, Nazarene, it just went on and on and on. So most everybody, not everybody, but most everybody was involved with that. Or when it came to somebody down the road for us, or somebody even in town, or somebody in town that used to live in the country. If Mike and his family got the flu and they're really bad and he's supposed to be milking the cattle or feeding his hogs or whatever, we made sure that his hogs were fed or his cattle were milked. We take down a big pot of stew and a peach cobbler or a cherry crumb cake or something, enough to feed them for 2 or 3 days and kind of help them get on their feet, something that's healthy, something that's good, because maybe they can't cook. So it just goes on from one thing to another thing to another thing. And I think all of that is encouraging as well as, it's helpful. It shows other people care. And that's one thing that I heard this from my parents. I think it was. I've heard it so long ago. I think it was my parents. I don't remember. But the more people you help, the better person you become. So I think that it's a fact that if you reach out to others, you don't have to say, hey, what can I do for you? It's just maybe hey, do you mind if I help you with that? I'd like to learn that. Wow, I've never seen that been done before. You might have seen it done 30 times, but you don't have to tell them that. It's like, wow, that's kind of cool. So a lot of it is just, along with the community is communication. We have such a lack of communication anymore, and especially the younger generations. It's like, we're raising twins we adopted that are 8.5, and they get so far into their iPads that they were given for Christmas by somebody else. I would never have done it because they get so much into them, they don't even look at you. Or when they hug you goodnight, they got their eye down here looking at their iPad. It's like, no, I turn it off, plug it away, turn it upside down, it's gone. And if you don't do that, all you're doing is encouraging a further problem of what you're already asking about. So, I think there's an old saying, or there's a story out that says, hard times make hard men make good times make soft men make bad, or something. I don't remember.
Yeah. No, that's pretty close. Yeah.
But that gets back to a lot of what you're saying and asking.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it seems that I think as I was asking you the question of how do people come to realize this notion of complaining doesn't help, is that we really have created such a bountiful society, so to speak, and things are pretty easy. At least the foundations of staying alive are. And we've lost connection to that deeper sense of grit, or deeper sense of, as you were describing earlier, reality, like growing up in a farm and seeing the reality of life and working hard. And we just are so disconnected from that. And yeah, it's not good. I want to ask you, so how does the idea of never quit, I mean, you described it in various ways. I don't know if you would, or how do you articulate it if you are talking about it or in the book? How do you define and sort of explain that?
I'd like to make a comment quickly.
Please, yeah.
You said something about complaining, and about complaining not doing any good. And that's a very good statement because for years and years and years, many years ago, people would say, Jay, how you doing today? I'd say, well, I complain, but it never seems to do any good. And that's you hit it right on the head. I said that for a long time. Or if you wanted to get a conversation going, you're checking out at the grocery store and Hazel's knowing you and your family for your whole life, and they've known your parents. They're older than your parents, and they say, "How you doing today, Jay?" I go, "Well, pretty crappy." Well, but it started a conversation. Oh, really? What's the matter? But but now that I said that jokingly, I've lost where you were asking me to go.
About never quit.
Never quitting to me is something. Wow, I've had it my whole life. I saw it my whole life. It's like crops. It's like when you've driven around wherever you drive, you've got to see crops grow. Now the crops are going to grow. They're going to be mature. They're going to be harvested. They're going to die, and they have to start again. So you never quit. It's like when you get small cattle in and they're 180 to 200 pound feeders, and you feed them out till they're 850 to 950, depending on who you are and what type, and you send them to market. It just, you have to get up and go feed them or they're never going to hit their weight. So it's too soon to quit. But with me, I think also it was always when I was in the hospital in the Marine Corps, I had some 3rd-degree burns, and they were big, bulbous, ugly things, and they cut them off and everything turned black and crusty. And you would soak them in betadine. And I personally, they started it, but I personally just took over the job of soaking them in betadine twice a day. And I went to snip at it with scissors, and you had a little scalpel and had tweezers, and you pulled that area off the burn, like taking the crust off of a pie. Okay. Little bit at a time over many months. And sometimes you'd snip your leg and it would bleed, but you didn't feel it because all your nerves were dead. So, but the thing is I watched this burn that was big get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And it never did get all the way healed. They finally did skin grafts. But the thing is, it's always too soon to quit. I had to keep working at it. I had to keep pushing at it. I had to keep doing it. And that went with me through when my arm was all but torn off in 73, walking your fingers up the wall so you could get your deltoid muscle was severed, that's been put back together, and get all that working again, to having my neck paralyzed and Bill never told I was supposed to move. It's always, if it is to be, it is up to me. They can help me. They can instruct me. They can tell me. They can show me. They can encourage me. They can do whatever. But the one thing I realized is it's always up to me to do it. And you have to go out, not to just do what they want. You have to go above and beyond. And if you go above and beyond, you will succeed. You will champion yourself and your efforts. And the one thing that I realized, and I mentioned this to a lady in another podcast, that it was like, the people in physical therapy and OT, they want you to get better, but they see the now. They see where you're at now. They know kind of where they want you to go, but they don't express that to you, if that makes sense. They don't say, you can reach that down there. You can get to there. You've got to look at that. But let's work on this, but let's go towards that. And so the parallel bars, I mentioned this with a lady on a podcast, and I said, I never thought about just going a foot or two on the parallel bars when I was learning how to walk, and I couldn't grasp. My right hand still doesn't work. It never has worked. My left hand works pretty good, but my wrist is fused. All my knuckles have been broken. All my fingers have been broken, but it doesn't, I don't let it bother me. My point being that when and they walk behind you. If you've ever been in a physical therapy place, they're behind you with a wheelchair. Somebody's got a hold of you with a belt to hold you up in case you fall. And they're always willing to push you backwards into the wheelchair should something start, unless your legs just give out and they try their best. But not once did I just think about going a foot or two on the parallel bars, Mike. I thought about the end. How do I get to the end? I never saw the hall, at the end of the hall, or the doors at the end of the hall. I saw outside. I think if you were sit there and turn around, at least behind you, it looks like you've got a brick wall back there, unless it's.
I do. No, it's my office. Yeah.
Okay. So if you turn around and sit 2 feet or 3 feet from your brick wall, and that's what you looked at all the time, you had notes stuck on it or whatever you want to do with it, you limit your vision, you limit your ability to expand your thought pattern more than if you sit in front of a window and can look outside, because now your horizons are bigger. Or go outside. And I mean, I'm not trying to be philosophical here. I'm just being practical, because that's what it is, I think. But it's always too soon to quit. One thing I would like to, I heard this, gosh, many, many years ago. I heard it, read it, or saw it. I don't heard it, I think. But it was about a guy who's a famous sculptor, and he's got this perfect bust, and he's worked on it and worked on it. It's just perfect. Everything's perfect. And right up here on the person's on the thing, the nose of the sculpture is a bump, and he's got to get that bump just perfect off. So he takes it and he puts his, whatever you call it, because I'm not a stone cutter.
Sure. Yeah.
His chisel up against it, and he takes his mallet and he taps it, and it doesn't go, and he taps it, and he doesn't go, and he taps it. And he does this 1,000 times, 10,000 times. And on the 10,000th, 100th time, it comes off just perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Okay. In reality, was it the first time he hit it that caused it to start? Or was it the last one he did that made it go? You don't really know. So it was always too soon to stop. How many people do you know, or do people that are watching know, or did they do themselves quit right before they would have done it, right before it would have happened? They just give up. So there again, it's always too soon to quit. Never, ever. You can change directions. You can move. You can pivot a little bit. That doesn't hurt. It's like sight alignment. If you're shooting a rifle or a bow and arrow, that doesn't mean you can't move a little bit. It doesn't mean you have to turn 180 degrees, but just that little bit. But never quit trying. Never give up. It's always too soon to quit.
Awesome. That was great. I want to just maybe reiterate the idea of knowing where you want to go, and that matters. And also the where is my right foot at this moment kind of idea. So it's the relationship between those two things, as you say, or at least that's how I heard you say it, that I think sometimes people maybe struggle to see multiple things as being true at the same time, right? So we can focus very much on the present moment right in front of us, and also know that we want to be going to this place. And there was one other thing you said.
I'm so full of information.
Lost. Yeah.
It's
Darn
great.
it. Where did it go?
I told you I'm going to blow your mind here.
Right. Oh, I remember now. It was.
There you go.
I have to say to people too, either way, it's going to be hard. So if you want to give up and accept what is, well, that's going to be pretty shitty. So you might as well keep going and accept that that's going to be hard. But at least there's a potential better place in that never quit lane.
Sure, because it's like, how do you know it's there unless you've tried to get there? And I want to get back to something you mentioned. Years ago, I used to, 50 years ago, or heck, I forget how old I am.
49, you said you were born, right?
Yeah, I know. I'm 70. I'll be 77 coming up.
Okay.
Well, about 50 years ago, I was trying to explain to a group of people about, it was a business that I had, and I was trying to explain to them about focus and about having plans and knowing where you're going and have a goal. And what I did, I took on a whiteboard and I drew a circle. And at the circle, at the top of the circle, at the 12 o'clock, I put a little dot, or a big dot, I don't remember. And a little ways around the curve, I put another dot. And I said, okay, the top dot represents New York, And the far dot, the other dot, represents Paris. Now, that's an ocean liner that's going to make that voyage. So fully for 99 point, I believe it was 2%. I did the research on it back in the day. From a certain height on the ocean liner, you couldn't see where your destination. From New York to Paris. You couldn't see where you were going. So you had to have a plan and you had to have a goal. And you have ocean currents and wind currents and waves and all sorts of stuff that you have to, speeds and whatnot, you have to plan for to get where you're going. So if you don't have a focus, if you don't have a goal, if you don't have a plan, how to get there or what to do or how to correct your course, you're going to end up somewhere else. You're not going to end up where you want. It's like somebody that plays golf. I'm not a golf player. I've been on a golf course once or twice in my life to watch fireworks in a golf cart. I never walked on a course. But the thing is, all golfers would like to hit 18 holes in one. You're lucky if a lot of people are lucky if they ever hit one in their whole life and they play golf.
Yeah.
So the thing is, when you take that stroke, and this is just from observation and having a lot of friends that play golf, try and do your best, but correct it the best you can to make sure that you take less strokes to get to the hole. So that's just no different than the ocean liner. That's just a bigger world view of it. But so I don't know if that makes some sense.
It does, yeah.
It gives you a goal. You have to have a target. You have to know where you're going. And if you don't, formulate it along the way, a little bit. And you'll feel better about it too. I mean, in reality, get away from the ocean liner thing. It's like, helping somebody work out, helping somebody overcome a problem, helping somebody, as you said before, some people just can't see it. And I agree. Some people just can't. It's like unemployment. No matter if there were multiple jobs for everybody on earth and they paid 40,000 times more than they were valued, some people elect not to work.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Yep. Okay. I noticed the time winding away. I want to ask you, how do you have any sort of particular habits or prayers or mantras or little routine things you do regularly, or when you start to notice yourself, if you do ever get to the poor me, why me type of mindset? How do you work through things like that when life gets hard?
I truly just envision what I'm capable of and what do I need to do to make that happen. And that's the true answer. I do thank God every night when I go to bed for the day, whatever I've been through, because I'm still alive. And I thank and trust God every day when I get up, because I trust that He's got a plan for me for the day. And I trust that it's going to be something that I can accomplish because He's with me. He's walking with me. If Jesus wasn't walking with me, I would not be here. I say that with 1,000,000% confidence. I know He's here. I have said, why me, though, and I want to bring that up. And it was when my mother came to visit me at the hospital about 4 months after I had broken my neck. And my left arm was starting to move and my left leg a little bit, very little bit, a little bit. And she came in and, we were talking and I just said to her out of the blue, why me, Mom? Why me? And I didn't mean it bad, like, why me? What happened? And I didn't mean woe is me, but why me? I mean, I should have been chewed up in the feeding auger. I've been dead. This is my third time. This crap's got to stop. I'm getting tired of it. I mean, you gotta go through it with me to understand where I'm coming from, and what have I, and she told me, right then and there, she said, Jay, you made the choice to jump in the pool. You made the choice to jump in the pool. You had 2 people jump in to help save you. God helped them move to do that. So God saved you, but you made the choice to jump in the pool. And I've accepted that. And the prayer that I got was extremely uplifting. I had prayer. I had a prayer said for me, Mike, as I was laying face down. The doctor had just walked out and told me that I had broken my, he explained, I didn't know what happened. I just knew I was in bed and I hurt like hell. And I was paralyzed and I couldn't move. I didn't even know I was paralyzed. I just knew I couldn't move. But my wife had met somebody in the waiting room whose son was in a hospital. And the gentleman asked, he said he'd like to say a prayer for me. Would I accept it? Was that okay? And if so, blink my eyes. And I blinked my eyes. And he said a prayer and, about, being able to accomplish what I set out for and God would be with me and so on and so forth. Well, little beknowns to me, a gentleman's name was Tom Cooper, and Tom went to a very large church in the Minneapolis area that had about 5,000 congregants, and they had 3 services on Sunday and 1 on Wednesday nights. And he went to every service every Sunday and Wednesday night and asked for prayer for me. And my mother did the same. And I did the same. And I'm sure others did the same. But my point is that I was an overachiever, that's just my whole life. I've always been I got to overdo. I have to do it. And wow, forgot where I was at. I was talking about overachieving and
Prayer and how you
during the week,
Yep.
you got me back, is that during the week, I would overachieve because the physical therapist might say, raise your arm 5 times. You're struggling, right? I would do it 7. He said, no, I said 5. You do it 8. He said, okay, smarty, do it 10. I do it 12. Okay. You want to challenge me? I'll take the challenge. But my point is that during the week, I might see slight incremental changes over days, but on Sundays, not doing anything except working in my bed the best I could with what I had or what could move, I got more back. Was it the power of prayer lifting up? It's like going to a movie and seeing, hearing the heavens open and the songs burst out. Was it that, Mike? I don't know, but I don't have any other explanation. And that's what drove my faith from that point on. I had faith. I would pray. I believed. And there's a big difference between the word hope, because I hope I can, or I have faith that I can do that. 2 different words, or I believe that I can do that. It's completely different. And so it depends on whether you have hope, faith, or prayer. I mean, hope, faith, or believing. But prayer really came into me, but that's what throughout my life since then, it's like 2 years ago on my way to Florida, I was in a car accident, got bumped, whatever, slid across a couple lanes of traffic, hit a concrete abutment, slid across 5 lanes of traffic, down in the ditch, van was totaled, all the tires were blown out. I'm inside driving with hand controls and my wheelchair is back here behind me. Well, they finally get me out of the van and all this other stuff. And all I had was a cut on my right leg out of all of that. And I felt like I was a toothpick stuck inside a marshmallow the whole time. It was like God had his hand wrapped around me. And I said it to the people when they got me out. And I'm saying it again today because that's what it felt like. It was just like, I've got you and you're going to be safe. And people may think it's weird, but it's a fact. And, and the people came up, they took my blood pressure. I don't remember. I was real low. I was like 120 over 72 or something, or I was very normal, 110 over 72, come to think of it. And they said, you don't seem to have any anxiety or you're not, excited about what just happened. I said, gentlemen, you don't have a clue what I've been through in my life. This is nothing. I'm good. I'm alive. I'm okay. I'm talking to you. I can move my left arm, And so it kind of gives you a different perspective when you look at it like that.
Yeah. Well, a lot of what you said is well, one, I want to sort of acknowledge that people do not have to sort of have religious faith to embody many of the things that you just described.
Yes,
And I think
absolutely.
it's I think it's important because so many people, myself included, at one point in my life, I hear the word God, I hear the word prayer, and I sort of, my back goes up, and and that was out of my own ignorance and my own small-mindedness. And as I recovered from my madness, coming to develop a relationship with this idea of God and the transcendent and sort of whatever it is that's doing this the thing in the universe really matters, I think. And it kind of goes back to what we talked to earlier about community, the hollowing out of our spiritual lives. I do think it is really important for people to develop a relationship to whatever God means to them, and this idea of hope and faith. And as I was taught, hope, I always get it mixed up. I can't remember if hope comes before faith, so to speak, but I can hope I can get better, and I can have faith that if I do these things, I will get better, or things will change, was fundamental for me. And I'm not per se religious, although I probably act like I am. And sorry, last thing I'll say, because I really think this is so important, is one way that people can be more open to this. It sort of comes from a Buddhist angle of this idea of may I, like asking, which is a form of prayer, right? May I be open to, may I have well-being, may I ask for help, may I receive help, may I, yeah, I just wanted to mention all that, and I will stop talking there.
No, you're on cue. I mean, you're good with it all. I don't. I had perfect attendance in Sunday school, but it doesn't mean anything in reality. But I'm sure I picked up little things, and I think that the part of what we're missing in the world too, Mike, along with community, is discipline and consistency. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just they're basic, simple words, but there's just discipline and consistency, and through church. And we didn't go to church a lot, but when we didn't go to church, we went on picnics as a family. We embodied the familyness of it all, and we always said a prayer before breakfast, lunch, and supper. It was a short prayer, but it was just something we did, and a lot of times we would thank God off and on for little things that happened to us that day as individuals, my brothers, my sisters, my mother, my father. And but it seemed to be more common. But I I have not found that over the years, and I'm old enough to be able to say that now, that church is not necessarily the answer. It's what's in church, if you
Mm,
but it's your
mhm.
personal relationship with God or with that other being, that more powerful being. It's your relationship with that matters.
Yeah,
That's it.
beautiful. Yeah, I'm getting goosebumps.
Well,
I'll let those tinglies. It's lovely.
it's
Yeah.
like I said before, it's a lot of, before you and I spoke on here recording, a lot of it is, it's just things that are learned and earned. And I don't, like I say, I'm not into the self promotion issue whatsoever. It's more, what can you really help others learn and teach through what all that you've experienced, especially the life and the death and almost 4 years in hospitals. It drives me crazy when somebody says, I had to spend 3 days in the hospital, 5 years. Really? 3 days? Wow. Like, hey, do you mind if I go visit for a while? I don't care. I got off an elevator here about 9, 10 years ago, and I was on my walker, and the guy says to me, says, "Oh, you're on a walker, huh? You're going to enjoy that. I've been on one for 6 weeks." I said, "Really? 6 weeks? Oh, my gosh. I've been on this for almost 18 years." It's so, it's all a perspective. It's like he doesn't know, and I don't
Mhm,
really
mhm,
care. It's like,
mhm.
it is what it is. It's what I needed to get around you know. But as I go backwards, yes, I did walk. Yes, I was on leg braces. Yes, I used crutches and canes for about 17 or 18 years. Then I was on a walker after more brainstem surgeries, a walker for right at 18 years. Now I'm in an electric power wheelchair. There's my headrest back here. And And that's the only way I can get around. It's like that or on my scooter. And so, even though things are getting worse, I think things are getting better because I'm still alive. I'm still cooking. I can still think. I'm active. I go a lot of different directions, and I really hope that I'm helping other people. I really do. I think that bringing it back, a lot of things that we've talked about here. Wow. I mean, it would appear that some things that what we've talked about have affected you. I mean, you've understood. Have a different perspective. But that's the whole point. We all look at things from a different perspective, you know?
Okay. Well, Jay, thank you so much. All your, the info about your book and your work will be in the show notes for people to check out. And thank you so very much for sharing your wisdom with us.
I appreciate it very much. And I want to mention the book has been doing really well, and it's number one in two categories. And I had no concept that would ever do that on Amazon. It's number one in the physical disability inspiration through physical disabilities section, and uh, late teen through mid 30s for motivation and inspiration, which really surprises me. And about 3 weeks ago, I'd like to mention, I got a letter from an 88-year-old lady, 88-and-a-half-year-old lady on my website. And she said, I want you to know, Mr. Setchell, that I've read your book. My son got it from his son, so grandson to her. And I read your book and I read it again and I highlighted and underlined and all that stuff. Then I went back and I reread certain parts and I read it and read it and read it. And I want you to know that I'm 88 and a half and my husband passed away about 5 years ago. And I really didn't, till I read this book, I didn't care if I lived to be 90. I really didn't care. I'm old enough. I've been through enough. I've seen enough. I didn't care. I've now changed my mind and I'm inspired to live and I'm planning my 95th birthday. And hallelujah, that's an amazing thing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Amazing.
The book's more, it's not about, there's a little bit in there about my physical issues and stuff, but it's more about what you do to overcome stuff. It's not about the obstacle, Mike. It's about how did you get through it? How did you get over it?
Mm-hmm.
What did it teach? What did you learn from it? What kind of increase in resilience did you gain from that? What kind of intellect did you pick up to address your next problem? So that's more what it's about. The strength within you, it's always too soon to quit, is that's where it comes back. So, but I appreciate it. And I'd like to leave these last words that you have, that what lies behind us and what lies ahead of us are small matters compared to what lie within us.
Beautiful. Thoreau, I think. Isn't that Thoreau?
That is Ralph Waldo Emerson. Well,
Emerson, yeah.
I've checked it out and it's accredited to him, but they don't know for sure who said it.
Okay. Yeah. Why did I think? I love that quote. Thank you so much.
Hey, you're welcome, sir. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the State of Mind podcast. Before you go, pick one idea from today's episode and practice it this week. Remember, live with courage, clarity, and compassion. Practice inner strength and develop within. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a thumbs up, a share, a like, a follow, subscribe to the podcast, and share it with someone who you think might find it helpful. I wish you all the very best. Take it easy. Peace out.